Melvin from HairTransplantNetwork.com. Today we're going to talk about the dreaded shock loss. Shock loss was the one thing that kept me from having a hair transplant when I was 21 years old, and I consider myself lucky because of that. I had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Konior, who's often regarded as one of the best hair transplant surgeons in the world, and it comes down to his attention to detail and meticulousness. I asked Dr. Konior if the shock loss could be avoided, and here's what he had to say.
One last question before, because I know we went a little over time.
That's fine.
Last question. Do you think shock loss is preventable? Can you, like, 'cause people always ask, uh, which surgeon doesn't get shock loss? Can I prevent it in any way? Is there something a patient can do to prevent it, or is it just
Sure, absolutely. Don't have surgery. It's completely preventable. I mean, here's the deal. When you really look at shock loss, and I think a lot of patients have a misconception of what shock loss is, and I think many people correlate shock loss in a lot of ways like permanent loss of hair. And to me, I look at shock loss as just being a hair that's retreating into a dormancy phase because of the surgical process. So we know quite clearly that when you stress a follicle out by removing it, whether it's with extraction, whether it's with strip, most people are going to assume, hey, 100% of these follicles are going into a resting phase. Well, it's really shock loss. What you've done is you've shocked that follicle. And we know with confidence that if I took a good strip and my techs harvested it or dissected it well and I planted it well, it's coming back in 3 to 4 months. Same holds true for FUE. Now, when we're grafting around hair, these follicles are sitting on your scalp and they're happy. They're sitting at 98.6 degrees. The circulation is good. The oxygenation is good. Your electrolytes, everything's balanced. It's another day up on the scalp. Now here we come along. We start pushing lidocaine into the area, tumescent. We're starting to make all of these cuts. The cuts are creating their own swelling on top of what we're injecting. The more cuts we make, the more circulation we knock out. Adrenaline is in this anesthetic, so we control bleeding. We're cutting circulation down even further. Now we've got this massive recovery phase. There's swelling. There's inflammation. There's all these changes going on. The first thing these follicles are doing, sitting up there, is going, what happened? It's like taking the baby out of the womb.
Yeah.
And so my take on it is that whenever you subject a follicle to a physiological change, whatever that change may be, and knowing that everyone's a little different in terms of their sensitivity, all follicles subjected to a change have the potential to go into a dormancy phase. We're changing the environment of the follicle so its responses retreat, just like extracting. My rule has always been that a follicle that's going to be hanging around on your head for several years, I look at that as a healthy follicle. Genetically, physiologically, it's going to recover in 3 to 4 months. If you got hair loss that the crystal ball shows that you're going to have significant loss of your own hair within a year's time, it's not recovering from shock. So is it preventable? Well, yeah, anything you can do to minimize the physiological alteration of the day. Smaller openings rather than bigger openings, lay off of the anesthetic, try to minimize things that interrupt circulation. I mean, even like the temperature swings that go on, the postoperative inflammatory phase, how do you keep that down to an absolute minimum? And, again, meticulous openings. If you are making your slits with a 0.8 millimeter say blade versus a 0.9 millimeter blade, you're only looking at 1/10 of a millimeter difference between those blades, but multiply that by 2,000 or 3,000. What you find is, holy smoke, I can't believe how much additional cut I've made on this scalp. It's tremendous. It really is tremendous. So again, what's your team doing? Are we using an 18 gauge needle to put in a 1-hair graft? Or are we using like a 0.5 millimeter, to put in that 1-hair graft? And then how meticulous are you? You hear of somebody coming in to make 2,000 openings just before the tech comes in, and in 5 minutes, 2,000 openings are made. Whereas during stick in place, We could be sitting here for hours just struggling to make meticulous openings, looking for the exit angles of existing hair on the scalp. So you can't control it completely. There's no question without avoiding surgery, but anything you do to increase the meticulousness of the surgery, minimize the invasiveness, the physiological changes, the anesthetic circulation changes, the better off you're going to be. This comes down to the technician. This comes down to the surgeon. What am I doing to assure this patient's best interest? And anything you're doing to cheat, to speed the case up, to minimize your involvement, the oversight is very important in terms of assuring the highest quality possible. But even with the highest quality possible, you're going to get some shock loss.
And I think also some of it comes down to the patient too, because like guys that are super anxious, that are super stressed, we know that stress causes your hair follicles to enter the dormant stage. Like if someone's physically stressed, you will notice hair shedding. So don't stress yourself out, because if you stress yourself out, that's only going to exacerbate the condition. So that's something that a patient can do to minimize it, is, stop stressing, stop being so anxious, stop looking in the mirror every 5 seconds and driving yourself nuts, because that's not going to do any good. It's going to do harm, as a matter of fact.
It's a good point. It's a very good. Yeah, everybody should. It's like jumping out the plane with your parachute. Once you've jumped, enjoy the ride down and hope that chute opens. But once you've walked out of surgery, man, it's all done.
Yeah.
And you just got to let time pass. And whether you obsess about it for 3 or 4 months waiting for those first few hairs, or whether you don't, it's not going to change anything. And if it does anything, like you said, it probably will introduce an element of stress that could even prolong the regrowth or enhance shedding post-operatively.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, I believe this passionately. I believe a good result it's really in the surgeon's hands. Now, that being said, there are people who are poor growers, or people who have compromised skins, who have scarring disorders, who have bad diets, whatever it may be. But the bulk of the result is going to be based on what happens in surgery. There's no question.
For those of you unfamiliar with Dr. Konior's work, do me a favor and go on hairrestorationnetwork.com. He has dozens of reviews with some of the best hair transplant results you'll ever see, and his patients are his biggest supporters. If you want to check out the full interview, the link will be in the description. Alright guys, till next time.